The sun beat down hard on the Arizona plains, not a cloud in sight, and not a lick of shade to be found. It was 1856, and the desert stretched on forever, golden and cruel. Josie May Campbell was only 8 years old, but already she knew what it meant to be alone. She sat in the back of a stagecoach, her bare feet barely touching the wooden floor. Her mama's shawl was wrapped around her shoulders, even though the heat made her sweat. It still smelled like rose water and comfort. Her mama was gone now, killed in the ambush that took the rest of the passengers 2 days back. The outlaws came like ghosts, silent and sudden, rifles raised, faces hidden. They took the horses, ransacked the strongbox, and left Josie hidden in the brush, tucked away by her mama's final breath. She didn't cry. Not then. Not when the gunshots stopped or when the buzzards started circling. Not when she buried what she could of her mama with her own small hands, stones laid careful atop the shallow earth. She just stood, covered in dust and grief, and started walking. By midday the soles of her feet were raw and blistered, the stage road stretching on like a ribbon of fire. She didn't know where she was headed. The map her papa once drew, before he left for California gold, was long gone. But Josie May had one thing, her name, and that name was tough as rawhide. She walked for near half a day, following the wagon ruts until the road forked. To the left, the trail vanished into canyons and cliff faces. To the right, a low rise of red rock shimmered under the sun. She didn't think, just turned toward the red rock. Something about it felt less empty. She didn't know then, but she was being watched. Up on a ridge, half hidden behind a stand of mesquite, a figure sat astride a painted horse. Tall and still, he wore a band of feathers and a bow across his back. His name was Nantan, a scout of the Apache. His eyes were sharp and patient. He'd seen the girl walking, alone, and followed, unsure what to make of her. No adults, no weapons, just a child with dust in her hair and grit in her steps. That night, as the stars bled across the sky, Josie huddled beneath an old wagon wheel that had broken off long ago. Coyotes howled in the distance, and fear crept in around the edges. She clutched her mama's shawl and whispered into the dark, "I ain't scared." It was a lie, of course, but it helped. And just before dawn, when her eyes were heavy and the heat of the day was just starting to hum on the horizon, Nantan stepped out of the shadows. Josie scrambled to her feet, fists clenched, chin raised. He didn't speak, just crouched low, held out a flask of water, and watched her without blinking. She stared back, suspicious and half ready to bolt, but her throat burned like fire, and the water was all she could see. She snatched the flask, gulped it down in great noisy swallows, then wiped her mouth and glared at him like she meant business. "You a bandit?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Nantan didn't answer. He just pointed toward the east, where the mountains rose soft and blue. "You come," he said, the words heavy with accent but clear enough. Josie May looked at him a long time. Then she nodded once, slow and steady. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know who he really was. But she knew she couldn't survive alone. And so the road twisted again, and Josie May took her first step into a world she didn't understand, with an Apache warrior as her only compass. The desert don't take kindly to strangers, but it's got a funny way of testing the ones who wander through it. Josie May rode behind Nantan, holding tight to the blanket cinched round her waist, staring at the land that stretched out ahead like it had no end and no mercy. They didn't talk much. He wasn't a man of many words, and she wasn't a girl who liked showing weakness. But every so often he'd glance back, check in on her like she was a rabbit that might bolt. His eyes were dark, steady, not mean, not soft either, just watchful, like the land itself. That first day they rode till the sky turned the color of spilled blood. When they made camp, Nantan built a fire small enough not to draw attention, but warm enough to keep the cold night teeth from bit in. He laid out a bundle of dried meat and hard corn cakes, gesturing for her to eat. Josie took one bite, chewed slow. Tasted like dirt and bark, but it filled her belly, and she was too polite, or maybe too smart, to complain. "You got a home?" she asked, finally breaking the quiet. Nantan didn't answer right off, just looked into the flames. Not anymore, he said. Josie nodded like she understood, 'cause maybe she did. Later, she curled up near the fire, wrapped in that old blanket. Her mama's shawl was folded under her head like a pillow. She stared up at the stars, her mind racing. She thought about the stagecoach, about her mama's last breath, about the way her name sounded when spoken by someone who loved her. She thought she might cry, but she didn't. She was too tired, too sore, and the desert don't give much room for tears. Next morning, Nantan handed her a waterskin and said, "We go high today. Cool wind, good shade." They rode up into the hills, the land growing redder, rocks jagged like broken teeth. Buzzards circled overhead, but Nantan said that was normal. Just watching. Waiting. By midday they reached a shaded pass, where tall pines grew in stubborn defiance of the heat. There was a creek there, thin but clean. Josie dropped to her knees and drank like she'd never tasted water before. "You learn fast," Nantan said, squatting nearby. "Most white children cry by now." Josie wiped her mouth on her sleeve. "I cried yesterday." He didn't laugh, but she thought she saw his lips twitch. Later that afternoon, they came upon signs, hoof prints, boot tracks, broken twigs. Nantan crouched, running his fingers along the dirt. "Riders," he muttered. "Not good men." Josie felt a chill despite the heat. "Bandits," she whispered. He didn't answer, just stood and motioned for her to follow. They moved quick then, staying low through the rocks, talking, side trails only he seemed to know. That night they didn't light a fire, just ate cold jerky and slept beneath a rocky overhang. Nantan sat upright, back to the stone wall, bow in hand, eyes never closing. Josie curled beside him, heart thumping. She knew now, this wasn't just a ride through the desert. She was running from death and riding toward something she couldn't name. And that Apache warrior with the quiet eyes and the scar across his knuckles? He was the only soul standing between her and the dark. By the third day, Josie May's legs ached from riding, and her hands were blistered from holding the saddle horn. But she didn't complain. Out here, words were precious, same as water, and she wasn't about to waste them. They rode east, Claimin through a cut in the rock, where the earth bled red and orange. The place felt older than time. Walls carved by wind and water, painted with shapes Josie didn't understand. She spotted handprints on the stone, faded by sun and years, but still they're like ghosts. "What is this place?" she whispered. Nantan slowed his horse, letting her take it in. "My mother's people call it Sanashjai, the Echo Cliffs. Spirits speak here. You listen, you hear your past." Josie tilted her head, listening. All she heard was the breeze through stone and a hawk crying somewhere high above. But maybe, just maybe, there was more. They stopped at a narrow ledge where water trickled down into a shallow basin. Nantan dismounted first, then helped Josie slide down gentle. He didn't speak, but the way he offered his hand, like she was something worth protecting, meant more than 100 words. While he gathered herbs from the cracks in the stone, Josie wandered a little. She found a hollow beneath an overhang, and inside, scratched into the wall, were shapes, horses, arrows, suns, and one tiny figure with arms raised to the sky. She reached out and ran her fingers over it, feeling the grooves like a secret told in silence. That night, back at their hidden camp beneath the cliffs, Josie asked about the herbs. "For sickness," Nantan said, grinding the leaves in a stone bowl. "For sleep. For dreams." "Do you dream?" she asked. "Only when the world forgets to wake me." She didn't quite know what that meant, but it sounded true. She fell asleep with the cliff wall at her back and stars above her head. And she dreamed. She dreamed of her mama, sitting on the porch of their old cabin, humming some tune Josie hadn't heard since spring. There were no stagecoaches, no gunfire, just the sweet smell of cornbread and the sound of wind in cottonwood trees. When she woke, the dream clung to her like dew. But peace never lasts long in the desert. Just before dawn, Nantan stiffened. He was already squatting by the fireless pit, packing their things, but now his body froze like a deer catching scent of wolves. Josie sat up, heart hammering. He raised a hand quiet, then pointed west. down in the canyon, almost too far to see, for riders cut through the scrub like ants on a mission. Dust curled behind him, fast and hungry. "They're tracking us?" she asked. Nantan didn't answer. He just stood, tied the gear fast to his horse, and pulled her up into the saddle before Claimin behind. They rode hard then, no speaking, no rest, just the thunder of hooves over sandstone and the sharp taste of fear in the wind. By noon, they reached a narrow gap where the rocks leaned close together, like two giants whispering. Nantan led the horse through on foot, checking each step. When they came out the other side, the world dropped away into a dry basin, wide and empty, and sunlit like a bowl of fire. He stopped there, looking back. "Those men," he said, "they ain't after me. They're after you." Josie blinked, feeling her stomach knot. "But why? I ain't got nothing to—" Nantan looked down at her, his face shadowed under the brim of his hat. "Maybe not now," he said, "but somebody thinks you do." Josie didn't speak. She just clenched her fists and stared at the trail behind him. Whatever was chasing her, it wasn't done yet, and neither was she. The desert changed as they rode deeper. Red gave way to gray, then to the flat, cracked white of old salt flats. Wind whistled low, carrying sand and secrets. Josie sat quiet in the saddle, her arms wrapped round her belly, hunger gnawing, like a coyote at a carcass. They hadn't stopped all night, not with those riders behind him, and though the hoofbeats had faded, neither of them trusted the silence. Nantan rode with his bow strapped tight, eyes cutting left and right like a hawk watching for snakes. By mid-morning they came upon a trail, narrow and winding, cut deep into the side of a mesa. Bones lined the path, old ones, sun-bleached. Cattle, horses, a few not. Josie stared. "Is this a burial place?" she asked. Nantan shook his head slow. "No, this is where people disappear." That wasn't an answer she liked. They pressed on, each step of the horse echoing in the canyon like a drumbeat. Around noon they reached a high bluff where the land opened like a broken promise. Down below sat a village, Apache, but not Nantan's people. The lodges were quiet. Smoke rose from one chimney. A watchtower of stone stood on the ridge, and a boy not much older than Josie leaned on a spear, watching. "They'll see us," she whispered. "I want them to," he said. They rode down slow, careful-like. Josie could feel the eyes on her, some curious, some sharp enough to cut. An old woman stepped out from a roundhouse, gray braids hanging to her waist, beads catching the sun. She said nothing at first, just stared hard at Nantan, then at Josie. "Child," she said, "you carry trouble behind you." Josie nodded. "I know." Inside the roundhouse it was cool, the air thick with sage. Nantan spoke with the old woman in a tongue Josie didn't understand. They argued low and fierce, like two rivers fighting for the same bend. Josie sat still, listening to the drums of her own heart. Finally, the woman turned to her. "Your name?" "Josie May Campbell." She nodded, like that told her something. "You are not the first child left behind by violence. You will not be the last. But if you stay, you must earn your place." Josie didn't hesitate. "I can fetch water, split kindling. So, and I ain't scared of blood." The woman raised a brow. "I reckon you'll do." Josie stayed that night in a small tent near the river's edge. It was her first time sleeping under canvas since the ambush, and when the dark came, it came heavy. Coyotes called in the distance. The moon rose slow and solemn. Sometime after midnight, she heard footsteps outside, light ones. She sat up, hand on the knife Nantan had given her. Then the flap lifted. It was the boy from the watchtower. He said nothing, just stepped inside and knelt by the fire pit, laid out a small cloth bundle, dried berries, jerky, and half a sweet root. "Gift," he said, his voice shy. "For the brave girl." Josie's throat tightened. She nodded once. "Thank you." He smiled, then slipped back out, silent as shadow. She ate slow, savoring every bite like it was Sunday supper, then curled back under her blanket and whispered into the night, "I ain't alone no more." But the wind outside didn't bring peace. It carried the scent of dust and riders still coming. And in the black beyond the firelight, someone else watched, someone who knew Josie May's name, and wanted her back. Dawn bled slow over the desert, streaking the sky in pink and gold. Josie May stood at the river's edge, barefoot in the silt, her dress wet to the knees. The water was cold, clear, and ran fast over the stones, like it had somewhere important to be. She didn't, not no more, but it felt good to wash. She was scrubbing her arms when she heard a voice behind her. "You wash like you was raised on water," Nantan said. "I was," she replied, nothin. "Up near the Brazos. Green grass, muddy creeks. Mama said waters, where you clean not just your hands, but your soul." Nantan was quiet for a long moment. "Your mama sounds wise." "She was," Josie said, her voice just above a whisper. "They shot her for a pocket watch and 2 silver rings." They didn't speak again till she dried her feet, and they were walking back up the rise. At the village's edge, the old woman, Elu, waited. She held a bundle wrapped in deerskin and offered it to Josie. "For protection," she said. Inside was a pouch of herbs, a bone-handled knife, and a length of rawhide. Josie tied the pouch around her neck without a skin. "Storm's coming," Elu warned, her voice dry as the hills. Josie frowned. "Weather looks clear." "Not that kind," she said. That afternoon, Nantan scouted the trails west. When he returned, his face was hard. "They're close." Josie's stomach dropped. "The riders?" He nodded. 4 of them. Same horses from the prince. One's got a coat with silver buttons, the kind bankers wear. Josie felt her throat go tight. "That's Mr. Holt," she whispered. "He worked for the man my daddy sold land to. Always had something oily in his smile. You know what they want." She nodded, slow. "Not me. My daddy's land. Mama said there was silver in the hills, and Daddy left me the deed. It's in the satchel." Nantan didn't say anything, just looked toward the horizon. "They don't want no paper," he muttered. "They want silence." That night, the village braced. Fires were put out. Children sent into the ravine. Men readied bows, arrows, and spears. Rifles were scarce, but spirit ran deep. Josie didn't sleep. She sat outside her tent, knife in her lap, Nantan's shadow beside her. Around midnight, the first sound came, hooves. Slow, confident, like men who never questioned they owned the ground they rode on. Then a voice called out through the dark. "Campfire's a warm place, friends. No need for trouble. Silence. I'm looking for a girl. Small, brown hair, answers to Josie May. She's carrying something that don't belong to her." Nantan stepped forward from the shadows. "Girl's not yours," he said. "You ain't hers either," came the reply. Another silence. Then, "You got one chance. Send her out, or we'll come take her." Josie stood. Her knees wobbled, but she held the knife tight. "I'll go," she whispered. "Ain't no need for others to die." But Nantan grabbed her arm, firm and steady. "No, you were left behind once. Not again." Then the night split open. A shot cracked through the canyon. Screams followed. Fire lit the bluff as the riders surged forward. And Josie May Campbell, 8 years old, with her mama's shawl and a stranger's knife, stepped into a fight that had shaped the rest of her days. Gunfire cracked like dry lightning across the cliffs. Arrows sang in reply, cutting through the dark with deadly purpose. The Apache warriors moved like shadows, silent, swift, unseen, till it was too late. But the men chasing Josie weren't green. They were bounty-trained, cold-eyed, and paid well enough to risk hell for a payday. Josie huddled behind a stone outcrop, the knife clutched in her small hands. Nantan had told her to stay put, but she could hear him shouting in the distance. His voice carried on the wind with the fury of a storm. The riders came hard. One, wearing that banker's coat with the silver buttons, led the charge. Holt, that was his name. She remembered now. Always smiling at her mama with teeth too white and hands too smooth. Mama used to say he'd sell his own boots for a nickel if it meant making a dime. And now he was here. For her. A figure ducked beside her, Elu. "You must run," the old woman hissed. "I can't leave Nantan," Josie said, heart thundering like war drums. "You're not. You're surviving." That's what your mother gave her life for. Elu pulled a pouch from her sash. This will blind their horses. Cast it when the time comes. Josie stared at the powder, white and fine like crushed bone. Then she nodded, teeth clenched tight. The old woman slipped away, vanishing into the dust. Then came Holt's voice. "Little girl," he bellowed, "this don't have to be ugly. You give me what's mine. I'll make sure you end up comfortable." Josie stood slowly, just enough to see his silhouette through the haze, rifle raised, coat flapping, smug as sin. "I ain't got nothing of yours," she shouted. "Oh, now see, that's a problem," he replied, calmly chambering another round. "'Cause my boss says that land title your daddy gave you, that's worth killing over." Josie's blood turned to fire. She didn't understand much about titles or deeds, but she understood killing, and she understood greed. She took a breath, then flung the pouch of powder high into the air. The dust exploded like lightning, filling the canyon with a white haze that sent the horses reeling, and men shouting in confusion. And Josie ran. She scrambled up the rock face, feet slipping, fingers clawing. Behind her, a gun went off. Stone splintered beside her head. She didn't scream, just climbed. At the top, Nantan met her, blood on his shirt, a gash across his brow, but his eyes still sharp. "Come," he barked, pulling her up. They raced across the bluff as the riders regrouped below. One tried to follow, but a figure stepped from the shadows. The quiet boy from the tower, spear in hand. He didn't hesitate. The man fell before he could raise his gun. The battle didn't last long after that. By sunrise, 2 of the 4 riders were dead. One escaped, wounded bad. Holt, he wasn't seen again. Just his coat, riddled with arrow holes, hanging from a tree like a ghost's warning. Josie stood by the cliff's edge, shaking in her boots. But she didn't cry. She couldn't. Nantan came up behind her, laid a hand on her shoulder. "You've got fire, girl," he said, "and now you've got a choice." Josie looked up, eyes squinting against the light. "Choice. You can run, hide, try to forget, or you can stay. Learn our ways. Grow." Josie looked back at the village, the people who had fought for her, bled for her, who had not asked for gold or thanks or promises. "I'll stay," she said. And with that, the desert had a new daughter. The days that followed were quiet, but not idle. Josie May woke each morn with the sun at her back and the taste of dust in her teeth. The Apache village, nestled in a crook of the high mesa, was small, but it beat with a rhythm older than any clock. She was a stranger at first, no doubt about it, but the people watched her with patience, not scorn. Nantan brought her to Elu's lodge each morning. There Josie learned not just chores, but meanings. How to grind corn with stone, how to make salve from rabbit brush, and how to listen when words weren't said. "You want to survive out here," Elu told her one day. "You got to learn with more than your eyes. You got to learn with your bones." That stuck with Josie. She practiced walking quiet, moving through brush like wind. Nantan showed her how to track a lizard through sand, how to find water by listening to the land. She learned to sleep light, eat slow, and keep her blade close, but not too close. But not everyone took to her so kindly. There was a boy, older than her, tall and lean as a willow switch. His name was Kehoe. He'd seen war already, carried himself like flint. He didn't speak to Josie for 3 whole days, just stared with those hawk eyes. Then one evening, he walked up to where she was sharpening her knife and dropped a stick at her feet. "Show me," he said. She blinked. "Show you what?" "How you fight." Josie stood, knife in hand. "I don't fight," she said. "I survive." He tilted his head. "Same thing. Sometimes." They circled each other under the darkening sky, firelight flickering on the stone. Kehoe came at her fast, a jab, low and sudden. She ducked, swung wide, and missed. He tapped her shoulder with a stick. Dead. Josie gritted her teeth. Again. They went at it 10 more times. She lost 9. But on the 10th, she dropped to her knees, rolled, and clipped his ankle hard enough to make him stumble. Her blade stopped at his ribs, just shy of skin. They both froze. Then he grinned. "Maybe you do survive," he said. That night, she sat beside the fire, sore but proud. Nantan handed her a strip of dried deer meat, and a smile so small you could miss it. "You've got blood in you," he said. "Not warrior's blood. Survivors." Josie chewed slow, letting the words settle like dust on her heart. But peace in the desert don't last long, and quiet ain't always safe. 2 days later, a message arrived, carved into a branch left at the edge of camp. Symbols burned into the bark. Nantan's face went still when he read it. "What does it say?" Josie asked. He looked toward the horizon, where the sun bled red. "It says someone's coming, and they ain't riding for talk." Josie felt her chest tighten. "More riders?" "No," he said. "Worse. A man who owns men. The one Holt answered to." She didn't need his name to know the truth. Her past wasn't just riding behind her anymore. It was heading straight for her with gold in one hand and fire in the other. They called him Cyrus Gentry. He wasn't born rich, but he sure took to it like a vulture to fresh kill. Bought up land clear across 3 territories, building an empire on dust, bullets, and fear. Folks said he wore his wealth like armor and his cruelty like a badge. And now he wanted Josie May. Not for her charm, not for her name, but for a scrap of land deeded by her daddy, tucked away in some legal book in a courthouse far from here. That land, dry and ugly to most eyes, hid silver veins deep in its bones. And Gentry wanted it all. When Josie heard his name, her stomach dropped like a rock in a well. "He's coming himself?" she asked Nantan. "Yes," he said, his jaw tight. "He don't trust others with something this valuable. And he'll burn this place down to get it," she whispered. Nantan nodded. "Unless we find another way." The village held council that night. Elders, hunters, mothers with babes on their hips, all speaking in low voices. Some wanted to flee. Others wanted to fight. Elu raised a hand. "This girl," she said, pointing at Josie, "has brought trouble, but she has also brought truth. If we run every time a white man rides in with a gun, we will have no home left to protect." They looked to Nantan, then to Josie. She stood up, heart pounding, throat dry. "I never asked for any of this," she said, "but I'm done running. If Gentry wants me, he'll have to take me, and he'll bleed for it." The silence that followed was thick as molasses. Then Kehoe grinned. "I'll stand with her." Others murmured, then nodded. The fight was on. In the days that followed, the village became a fortress. Traps were set along the trails. Spears sharpened. Bows strung. Josie helped wherever she could, carving stakes, tying knots, mending wounds on old hides that would become armor. Nantan taught her how to shoot. It wasn't with a fancy rifle, but a rough iron pistol left behind by one of Holt's men. She practiced on stones, cans, and once, a rattlesnake that slithered too close to camp. She missed more than she hit, but she didn't stop. Then, on the 5th day, the dust rose. A dozen riders, dressed in gray and black, rode up the canyon trail like death on parade. At their front, Cyrus Gentry. Long coat, white hat, silver spurs. He rode a white horse, like some twisted version of a knight. They stopped just outside bow range. Gentry removed his glove slow, deliberate. His voice rang out calm and cold. "I ain't here to burn your village. I'm here for a girl. Josie May Campbell." Josie stepped forward before anyone else could. "I'm here," she called. "But I ain't yours. And I ain't handing over what's mine." Gentry chuckled. "You've got fire. Shame it won't last." He turned to his men. "Take her." But as they spurred forward, the trap sprung, spikes, tripwires, and fire arrows rained down from above. Screams echoed through the canyon as horses bucked and men fell. Gentry's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. He pulled his rifle, but before he could aim, a shot rang out. "Josie." The pistol kicked hard in her hand. The bullet grazed Gentry's shoulder, knocking him from his saddle. He scrambled behind a boulder, shouting curses. His men faltered, retreating under the hail of Apache arrows and war cries. Within minutes, the canyon was quiet again. Gentry was gone, wounded, humiliated, but not dead. Not yet. Josie stood breathing hard, pistol still smoking in her grip. Nantan walked up, nodding slow. "He'll come back." "I know," she said, "but so will I." The desert held its breath. After the ambush, Gentry didn't return right away. His men had limped off like whipped dogs, leaving trails of blood across the stone. But the quiet that followed weren't peace. It was the kind that came before a flood. Josie May knew it, felt it in her chest like thunder behind the hills. She stood by the village gate each morning, pistol on her hip, eyes squinting toward the trail. Nantan stayed close, but he let her hold her ground. "If you're gonna fight," he'd said, "best you do it with your chin high and your heart steady." So that's what she did. Elu gave her a necklace woven from hair and bone. "For courage," she said. Josie touched it often. One night, the wind changed, blowing hot and fast from the east. With it came smoke, not from a campfire, not from cooking, from the land itself. They climbed the ridge and saw it, the low hills beyond the canyon burning in a wide, angry arc. Not wildfire. No lightning struck. This was lit by hand. A message. "He's flushin' us out," Nantan growled, "trying to smoke us like rabbits." Josie's fists clenched. "Then we don't run. We ride." It was Kehoe who spoke next. "We know where he camps now, by the old well at Crow's Spine. His men were seen there last sunset." Elu frowned. "It is not our way to chase." Josie looked at her, voice steady. "It's mine." Before the sun rose again, they rode, Josie, Nantan, Kehoe, and 2 others. Silent, swift, blade-strapped, bows ready. Josie carried her pistol close, the grip smoothed by her thumb. They reached Crow's Spine by mid-morning. The land was dry, choked by ash and smoke, but the tracks were clear. Gentry's men were nearby. They found the camp half dug into a gully. Canvas tents, rifles stacked, 2 guards watching lazy-like. Josie crawled close with Kehoe, waiting for Nantan's signal. Then came a whistle, soft, like a hawk's cry. Kehoe loosed his arrow. The first guard dropped. Josie moved fast, slid down the embankment, and charged into the confusion like a dust devil. She didn't think, just acted. A man rose in front of her, rifle swinging wide. She fired once, missed. He charged. She didn't retreat, just stepped in, knife flashing. She slashed across his arm, kicked him in the knee. He fell. Kehoe finished it. Gunfire cracked above as Nantan's arrows kept the others pinned. Then Gentry stepped from his tent, coat gone, shirt bloodied, face twisted in fury. "Little rat," he snarled, "you come for your land?" "No," Josie said, breathing hard. "I come for your lies." He raised his pistol. She shot first. The bullet hit his thigh. He screamed, dropped to one knee, and aimed again. But Nantan tackled him from the side, slamming the breath from his lungs. Josie stood over him now, pistol still hot in her hand. "You killed my mama. You sent men to burn these people's homes." Gentry coughed, Logan even in pain. "I did what any businessman would do." Josie looked down at him, that same quiet in her eyes as the first day Nantan met her in the wild. "I ain't in the business of mercy." But she didn't pull the trigger. She turned and walked away. Kehoe and Nantan hauled Gentry up and tied him like a hog for market. They brought him back to the village, not as a killer, but as proof. Proof the past could be faced. Proof Josie May Campbell wasn't just a girl running from ghosts. She was a name now, a fire that wouldn't go out. They didn't hang Cyrus Gentry. That would have been too easy. Instead, the council bound him, blindfolded him, and rode him out to the edge of the old arroyo where the rocks dropped like a cut from the world. There they left him alive, but alone. No gun, no gold, no men. Just the sound of the wind and the taste of his own failure. "He won't last long," Nantan said, not boastful, just plain. Josie didn't reply. She stood at the bluff's edge, looking out across the desert. Same land her daddy once called home. Same land her mama died trying to protect. She pulled the deed from her satchel, creased, dirt-smudged, the ink faded. But her name was still there. Josie May Campbell, legal owner of 120 acres in the dry hills beyond the Red Mesa. "Still yours," Nantan said. She nodded. "Don't want to own it. I want to live it." So that's what she did. She didn't go back east. Didn't try to find family, who might not even remember her name. She stayed. Over time, the Apache stopped calling her the girl and started calling her Tsia, little bird, not because she was weak or fragile, but because she'd flown through fire and still had wings. She learned their tongue, rode their horses, sang their songs. Elu passed a season later, quiet as a breeze. Left her medicine pouch to Josie. Kehoe taught her how to weave. Nantan taught her how to lead. And Josie taught the children how to listen, how to know the land, not just walk it, how to carry pain without letting it carry you. She visited her old land only once, planted a tree where her mama once braided her hair, set a stone by the creek with 3 letters scratched into it, MCC. Then she walked away, shawl blowing behind her, pistol holstered but still oiled. Not every story ends in vengeance. Some end in roots, in a name whispered by those who remember. And long after Josie May Campbell's boots quit stirring dust, the people still told her story, how a girl with nothing but a satchel and a scar changed the course of fire and shadow, how she looked death in the eye and said, "Not today."